Welcome to Bashy's Corner. It's a special program where we invite guests from all sections of society. Guests who have something nice or good or maybe objective to say about ethnic minorities. We take issues in the society which normally mainstream media doesn't dare or maybe is not interested to discuss. And to prove my point, I have invited a very special guest today, my good friend Edvard Horst. Christian is actually anthropologist, sociologist, and what I like about that is that you are an educationist who specializes in informal, formal education, especially when it comes to ethnic minorities in Denmark, right? Mm-hmm. But when I talk with you and over a cup of tea, you always tell me, hey, look, you are not the only one who is an immigrant. I am also an immigrant. And I laugh. You are a white, tall Viking, you know. How come you are an immigrant?
Well, you refer to my origins in the southern part of Denmark, and it's a border country, you know that. And it's been a divided country for a number of years, and we have a lot of cultures. There's a Danish culture, there's a German culture. You have what you call Sønderjylland, you have a heritage of Friesland and other things, all mixing together. Okay, and then when you move and grow up down there, you have a special accent. So when you move to Copenhagen, you will not be in company with many people before. Some of them will say, oh, where do you come from? Don't you come from the southern part of Jutland?
Do they point out that?
They'll point me out, and they will, with humor, but they'll spot that. Danes are in Copenhagen, especially in Copenhagen area, people are used to be very keen on spotting dialects and people from other parts of the country.
So it means that your accent, your way of behaving, I don't know clothes, because all Danes clothes very strange, but can they spot it and say, hey, you are not really good?
Maybe not so much today, but they used to.
Okay.
We used to. Yes.
And did you feel discrimination?
No, not really, because it was very often done in a humoristic way, but it's very clear that within a nation you have different regions and different social classes, and therefore you have what you would say diversity from within, which is tolerated to a very large degree. So as long as you're pointed out as belonging, or you make part of this diversity from within, then it's okay. Whereas if you belong to a diversity coming from without, then it's more skeptical.
Okay, but then the question is that Denmark is a very small country, and it is, in many people's eyes, a mono-ethnic, monocultural, mono-religious society. Christianity is main religion. All people are white, not blonde, but white, blue eyes, and have heritage from Vikings. And still, you are telling me that this monocultural society also has this diversity you're talking about.
All nations have always been very diverse. Okay. So the concept of monoculturalism is very closely linked to nationalism, which became a major political, ideological idea around the start of the 18th century. And from this time on, most nations in Western Europe started to develop a monoculture, which is that they put assimilationist pressure on the diversity within the territory.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Then the question is, because when people point out to you, okay, at that time they did that, you are not one of us, this what you call Copenhagen snobbery, did that affect your thinking, the way of acting, or maybe the way of being in Danish society or in Copenhagen society?
Not really. No. I was sufficiently proud of my heritage, so I didn't need to defend myself on such stupid issues. Whereas I think it's let people do what I became aware of was much more that culture means something, accent means something to a lot of people.
So that is why Prince Henrik is always ridiculed, because he has this Danish accent.
There is a tendency to expose people for their inadequacy to speak proper Danish, and I think it's foolish. I mean, you should listen to the message.
Yes.
And then discuss the message, the content of the saying, and then do an effort to do your best with a foreign language. I mean, when I go abroad in France or in English-speaking countries, then people are kind enough to tell me how wonderful I master the language.
Exactly.
And I don't.
But they
so
appreciate
therefore,
it.
And that gives a certain personal security, and you open up and you relax, and therefore we can come to points where we talk about essential issues.
Then the question comes, Christian, and you travel a lot, in different places. This Copenhagen snobbery, we all talk about that,
Okay. Yeah.
Where does it come from?
Well, I think maybe it's the fact that once you have become capital of a country, you also have the proper culture. The language.
Culture. What is
the proper culture is a culture that is mostly recognized. Oh. So you have the Center for Finance, you have the Center for University Education, you have the Center for Literature, Theatre, you have haute couture, the way people dress, and the way you speak. And if you have this sort of status inborn in where you live, then you can have this sort of upper class snobbery, Copenhagen snobbery. But of course you have different layers in Copenhagen. It's not only that type of snobbery. There is a middle class, there's a lower class, there's suburbs, there are environments to Copenhagen which are not quite like that.
So there is a hierarchy of snobbery.
There'll always be a hierarchy, yes.
Sorry?
Yeah, there'll always be a hierarchy in capitals or in main cities where people possess political and cultural positions that are dominating others.
It reminds me, many years back, I was working in Skåsud, which is in the suburb, very snobbish area. And I met a girl. She became very fond of me, and I wanted to invite her out. But she asked her father. And her father said to me, he said, "Bashy, you are a lovely person, young man. I would very much like my daughter to date you, but you live in Norrebro. And that is not my cup of tea." Right. So then I experienced that snobbery firsthand.
Sure.
And I said, "Well, I have an apartment." And so he said, "No, but we live in Klampenberg, So that snobbery, I could very quickly see that. Coming back to your professional expertise, you have majored in, I understand, in cultural sociology, but you have always been interested in the development of cultures. How come?
Well, partly from my background,
okay,
and the fact that I started my life, my sort of part of my professional life in doing practice. I've always been doing NGO works. I've always been struggling for social justice, and there on Nørrebro I worked at an institution called Askovgården.
Okay,
and then suddenly we had a number of children coming in from Turkey, Pakistan, Morocco, and different regions of Europe and close to Europe and the world, and they didn't make it well in school. So we found out, what should we do with them? We invited them in, and we tried to develop relations with the school system and find out how could we support these children in dealing with Danish language and their homework.
So I was right in the beginning when I said that your background maybe have affected what you want.
Oh, sure. I never denied that.
Okay. So when you start working with ethnic minorities and you saw their children, they had different needs, then this intercultural learning processes, you talk a lot about that. Can you explain what is this concept?
Well, intercultural education is in fact to develop an educational system which respects the actual diversity that you have in society.
Actual diversity.
The actual diversity, yeah. It's not just sort of a mix of expressions. Yes. So every locality has its own mixture of different cultures, class cultures, gender cultures, ethnic cultures, sexual identities whatsoever. And if you live in a democracy, it's very important that all children and all persons in this democracy develop knowledge about this diversity and can respect this diversity throughout their lives, and also organize learning processes where children from different backgrounds can recognize themselves in the teaching. So intercultural education is dealing with diversity in education and organizing education in such a way that children feel comfortable with their cultural heritage and identity.
So it means that there is a link between these processes and the development of a multi-layered intercultural society?
Once again?
This process you explained, this diversity. So can I deduce from that there's a link between these processes and then the actual development of society into an intercultural society?
Yeah, I would like to say we have a multicultural society. It's not a question
of whether...
It doesn't
function.
No, the function of a society, that's different things. But in fact, it is so that in the globalized world today, and it is increasingly so, we have a multicultural society.
I would call it intercultural.
You can call it intercultural. I would say that we have intercultural relation in a multicultural society, because if you make a status quo, then you have a number of cultures represented with different statuses. You have Danish nationalities, and you have a different number of other nationalities, and then you have people in between, and you have people from local cultures from somewhere. So you have a lot of signifiers about culture and nations. So, and the common word around the world would be multicultural. But if you want to say intercultural, do that. I mean, it's not a question of words, it's a question of how we regulate it and how we develop intercultural society or multicultural society for the benefit of all those who are present in society.
For the benefit. The reason why I insist is because, according to my understanding, in a multicultural society, you have the majority which has the means. They are the one who dictate. They are the one, and the minorities are on the periphery, singing, dancing, and making shish kebab. So that is this concept of multiculturalism.
No, that is a caricature.
Well, that
is a caricature.
That is what is happening.
It could be so.
Yeah.
But there's signs of that. But there are also a number of different other signs.
Okay.
If you go to countries like Canada or US or other countries, you can see that people are integrating and recognizing different cultures and different languages.
Denmark,
And if we go to Denmark,
yes,
then we, for a long time, have been on a move towards developing a multicultural or intercultural society. So it has been in Europe for a long time. Yeah. So the European context, building a European community as a multinational union,
yes,
with all the different ethnicities, not only the national ethnicities, but also with the regional ethnicities and regional languages and different religions or different interpretations of religions. You are confronted with a diversity that you cannot reduce to anything like one nationhood in one nation.
You also talk about the role of the learning institutions.
Yes.
Which can give a person competence, citizenship, and equality. How come?
Now, if you have decided as a nation to open your doors for people from other cultures, and you have taken them in as a workforce, or you have taken them in as refugees, and you want to make a unity, a continued unity, and develop a unity more or less peacefully or with social peace in your country, then of course you have to assure that all people have the same possibilities of pursuing their own wishes and their own qualities. And you can only do that by assuring equal access to education, and within the system of education give equal opportunity to people to profit from their talents. So this means that if you know a bit about language, for instance, then you would know, and Danes know that very well, that those Danes who are best at speaking Danish are also the best of acquiring a foreign language quickly. So it means that your mother tongue or your first language is very important in acquiring a second or a third or a fourth language. So therefore, if people come to Denmark with normally a different language than the Danish, then of course you should recognize their capacity in their own language and build on that when acquiring Danish as a second language.
So you mean that we should also respect the mother tongue of the people?
Yes, or the national language, or whatever the parents prefer, or what the parents speak at home. And we could do that by working together with ethnic minorities. We could do that by developing teaching books. We could do that by learning from experiences in other countries.
Okay. You focus on equality and mutual respect and balanced power relation between majority and minorities. All beautiful concept,
Yes.
But your theories, do they work in today's Denmark?
You cannot talk about theories working in practice. Well, you can talk about social relations and whether the social relations which develop between people, if they integrate into cultural perspectives in order to move onwards in mutual understanding. So it has to, if you take the position that you just go from theory to practice like that, then you miss the point. The point is, in fact, you have to go into a local context. If you go into a school system, look at what is happening in the school. What's happening with the children, with the teachers, with the parents in and around the school, and how are the teaching organized in order to fulfill the needs of all children and recognize the needs of all children.
But some people would maybe call your theories a gateway to socialism.
It has nothing to do with socialism, it has to do with solidarity. Socialism is a political theory which is, and you have different versions of socialism. You have socialism linked to democracy, you have socialism related to total political systems, totalitarian systems, which is quite different. I mean, so to mix in those political issues, I mean, that's to miss the point.
Then the question comes with very sensible theories and an explanation. Why hasn't Danish state, which actually is the one who gives money for all this research and establishing institution, why haven't they listened to people like you?
They have.
Have they?
They have. Okay. For a number of years they were very interested in dealing with diversity and bilingualism and other issues in intercultural education. But it has shifted. So it means that... Yeah, so the understanding of integration shifted in the mid-90s or around that, or around the year 2000. So the Danish way to addressing ethnic complexity rested much more on nationalism and national identity. So it has shifted a lot, and now they are trying to put an assimilationist pressure on the ethnic minority much stronger than was the case before. So it means that in Denmark there are two currents. One is a little bit progressive, and then the other current is very backward looking. Could we say there's a number of currents in Denmark?
Okay, let's talk about that.
Yeah, if you go, just like we talked about diversity from within, there's a number of people dealing with bilingualism, intercultural education, respecting different cultures, and doing a lot of hard work on this issue in different school environments around. Locally, a number of teachers. There are a number of researchers dealing with these issues. That's part of it. But there are a number of other currents that are dominating agenda-setting current is to sort of try to eliminate these ways of dealing with diversity. So it's a question of where you wind the system. But it's true that if you go to the official Danish policies and look at the integration programs from the different governments, that is, the liberal government or social democratic government, then it has become increasingly assimilationist.
Talking about assimilationist, in the 60s and 70s, when migrant, you can call them, or when ethnic minorities came, nobody talked about their culture, nobody talked about their religion. All Danish society was interested, give them a broom and they start cleaning, you know. But today, there's a lot of focus on people's culture and religion in explaining very complex issues. Why this change and how come it came about?
First of all, when the first migrants came to Denmark, it was a high conjuncture. There was a lot of work for everybody.
Cleaning.
Yeah, not only cleaning, but a lot of other jobs too. It was very easy to get a job. You have experienced that yourself. So there's no... Then we had the first oil crisis, and a lot of people were thrown into unemployment for a very long time. And it raised the competition between Danish workers and immigrant workers. And at the same time, you had refugees coming in from the end of the Vietnam War. You had people coming in from Africa and others, which means that the level of the composition of the Danish society become much more diverse without having the economic resources to meet these new demands. And
but isn't Denmark supposed to be one of the richest countries?
That's not the point. The point is, if you make that comparison, then you go and look at Denmark compared to other countries. But what we're looking at here, we are inside the country and looking at different groups compared to each other. And therefore, of course, there'll be a number of Danish citizens that feel marginalized, that feel that they're not taken care of as well as they should be. And at the same time, we're taking in more foreigners. And it gives a very easy position for raising nationalist ideology and saying now we have to close the borders, we have to unite around Danishness and
Yeah, but what people...
not all will do that, but a lot of people do that.
No, that's true, but still, I can understand if the focus was on unemployment, for example, or the focus was lack of resources. But this is not what is happening. What is happening is that the Danish state and the media and many political parties, when they talk about ethnic minority, it is always about culture. And it is always about their religion, which are the models of explanation. This is, many people wonder about that. Why is so much focus on that when it was not in the beginning?
Well, the relationship between economy and culture is a very complex one. So,
yes.
Okay, so we'll take step by step, and we cannot go across 40 years of development just in one phrase.
No.
So if you look at what happened in the 70s, it was because of unemployment, and as when we say the first oil crisis, it also meant that the nation as such realized that they could not afford to develop the welfare state anymore. It happens there in the mid 70s and the beginning of the 80s, which means that we had just had a new law on social welfare in 75. It was hardly dry on paper when they started to reduce it.
Yes.
And this has continued so. So all over from 75 until now, there have been what you call a restructuring of the welfare state, which has meant continued less money for those not well off. So, okay, and there has been a continued periods with regularly high unemployment, and only few periods with what you could call full employment. 1 point.
Yeah. But
just to say that is the bottom line where we are. Okay. Then you have had a number of incidents going on. We have, if you look at how the relationship between what we would say different cultures, especially the Muslim countries or the Middle East, and has been a very tough problem because you have these big events on 9/11, and you have the in July 7
in Spain and other places.
And this has also been a good sort of possibility to expose Islam and people with Islamic background as not wanted in the Western countries.
But that is my next question. Actually, you read my mind. Many people, political parties, media, academics, they say that they mention Muslims don't want to integrate in Danish society. So I want to ask you, as an academic and as a person with the heart at the right place, what do you understand and what is actually an acceptable model of integration in Danish society if Muslims have to integrate or have to be seen to be integrated?
Again, a hard question, which I think you are missing. You are missing the question of diversity, because we
I want to come back to the integration, because people keep on talking about nobody else except Muslim. They don't want to integrate.
You have seen that here.
What is your integration model?
The integration model is, of course, that all that arrive in Denmark subscribe to the democratic model. That's the nation state, the constitution. Okay. Right. So. A nation state is based on two parameters. Yeah. One is a democratic parameter based on developing equality and social justice. The other parameter is based on developing a collective identity which is inclusive to all groups.
But is there anything called collective identity?
Definitely, the school, we all carry collective identities, not only one, but a number of them, according to where we engage, how we engage with society. Okay. So, if you look at different cultures and say Muslim or Middle East identities, then you of course have to say that all those coming from these countries, or who subject themselves primarily to Islam before the political nation, they have to change necessarily, and it goes for all.
Why are you asking people to change?
The nation is a political community.
No, but that I understand. But why are you asking people to change their religion or culture in order to be part of that?
I don't want them to change their religion.
What should they change?
What should they change? The priority.
What should they change?
The priority. the allegiance is first of all to the democratic constitution of the nation state.
Everybody does. I have never heard anybody who say I don't agree with the democratic institution.
The problem is that this is exactly one of these points where people do not agree. You can find different religious cultures, also Christian cultures, who do not want to recognize the democratic nature of the political community.
Okay.
They insist on religion as the first community, and then the political activity underneath.
Okay. Well, the message, I got your message.
Because there are two messages.
Yeah. Quick.
The second message is that those living within the political community, they have to be tolerant and inclusive to all communities, and they all have to subscribe to the same democratic value, so that you have the democratic value as an umbrella over all communities.
Beautiful.
Dealing with equality and recognition, but all communities must, if there is any doubt, emphasize their allegiance to the political community and its principles.
With this message, Christian, I think our viewers have enjoyed this discussion, and I can assure you that the things you have been saying, we should take it up another time, little more, because time went very quickly. But your message that there's a duty of minorities and the majority society to function together and give the place to each other. And I hope I have understood you right. Thank you very much. So until next week, take good care of yourself and be inclusive, as Christian have said. Thanks.